Hello, Mark Lanier with your video thought for the day. So I've been reading the paper, and I got to tell you, the news is rampant with a problem in our country. It's an absence of this thing called compassion. Well, I'm not saying there's not compassion in the country, but I'm saying we see a lack of it in so many different areas. In politics, the right and the left seem to hate each other. And not just disagree over policy. There seems to be some deep-seated animosity that goes deeper. The people who are hurting in this world and people who can just go blithely by. And I want to talk about compassion this morning. There's a Greek word, splanchnizomai, which is hard to say, it's hard to spell. And if I were writing Greek, I would never use that word because of that. Yet the gospel writers use it over and over in reference to Jesus because it was an important concept. And so I want to talk about compassion in three ways real quick. Number one, that it's a trait of God. Number two, that it was taught by Jesus. And number three, it may be a chore, but it should be a deliberate trait for us as well, a deliberate effort. So first, that it was a trait of God. I think back about stories like when Jesus raised Jairus' daughter from the dead. Here's this 12-year-old girl, and everybody's in amazement, and rightly so. Jesus just raised her from the dead, and it wasn't something, it was an act of compassion in itself. It wasn't in Jesus' day planner. It wasn't what he was scheduled to do. It's something that arose. It's something he went and did. And while everyone's amazed and abuzzed about it, it's Jesus who has to say, she's famished. Would someone get her something to eat, please? And that's a trait that Jesus had. He was moved by compassion. The writers say when he fed the 5,000 because they didn't have any food. Compassion was a trait, number one, but number two, it was also taught by Jesus. So look at the parables in Luke, like the Good Samaritan. While person after person, including these godly people, supposedly, passed by a man who's been beaten because they have something else they have to do. The man who's been beaten and robbed and is lying in the gutter at the side of the street, it takes a Samaritan moved by compassion to change what he was doing that day and show compassion on that man. In the parable that Luke gives of the prodigal son, when the prodigal son comes back, the father not only welcomes him back, but goes lavishly overboard because the father was moved by splanchizomai, by compassion. So if it's first a trait of God and second taught by God, then three, shouldn't it be a deliberate act, something we model, something that's a characteristic of the followers of Jesus? We got an area rug recently in our bathroom, and it's not a big rug, it's the small bathroom rug, but the corners, it was curled up, and the corners curled up when Becky laid it out. And I noticed it, and I went and stood on one of the corners, and it flattened right out when I stood on it until I moved my foot, and then it just curled right back up. That's the habit that it was in at the time. And the next day I came in and Becky had taken that corner that curled up and curled it under itself. And so it spent a day or so curled under itself. I said, what are we doing here? And she said, well, it was curling up and I've got to compensate for that and teach it not to. And sure enough, after that, it flattened out. We've got to be like that carpet. If I just say be compassionate to myself and to you, then we're going to forget this video and we're going to go on down life and be about the same as we were before. But if we'll make a deliberate effort to counter our natural lack of compassion tendencies, then just like that rug, we'll find that we change our bent towards life. And so I want you and I want me to be deliberately compassionate today. And that might mean as soon as this is over, we send this to someone. But we also pray for that someone. Maybe it's someone we don't typically have compassion for. Maybe it's just a way we speak about people and things we say about them, not just to their face, but behind their back. Maybe it's a decision about how we're going to show love to someone who's unloved. whatever it is, do something right now. Let's make a deliberate decision right now that we're going to train ourselves to be more compassionate. And in that way, we'll not just see it as a trait of God and taught by Jesus, but it'll be something as his followers that we model. And that's me with my thought for the day. Now, back to the newspaper.